Hey guys, my name is Joseph Gamble. I'm one of the park rangers here at Fort Loudoun State Historic Area in East Tennessee. So our story here at Fort Loudoun is rather unique when it comes to Tennessee history. We were a British Army built fort during the French and Indian War, so 20 years before the American Revolution. So in this time, the British colonies and the Americans who live here considered themselves to be British. This is long before the idea of us declaring independence really comes into people's mind. It's also worth noting that there are other major powers in North America. The French Empire, they control most of what we call Canada, as well as Louisiana and modern day Alabama, all along the Mississippi. But then the majority of the inside of North America, especially over the Appalachian Mountains where we live, was all controlled by different tribes of Native Americans. The Cherokee, the Shawnee, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Creeks, etc., all had their own politics, cultures, and power bases, and often fought with each other as well as with different European groups. And oftentimes they also would ally with these European powers. Now, a lot of these tribes that we mentioned, the Creeks, the Shawnee, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw, all mostly allied themselves with the French. They were neighbors with the French down at Fort Toulouse in Alabama. However, they had long been rivals with the Cherokee people. The Cherokee were the most powerful native tribe in the Southeast, single tribe. And the Cherokee, because of their rivalry with these French allied natives, they gravitated to the British. And so the Cherokee came to the British all the time to trade, for diplomacy, for help if they needed it, and vice versa. The British relied on their Cherokee allies. Well, in 1754, the French and Indian War breaks out. Britain and France go to war, the final showdown over control of North America. Whoever wins this conflict will take all. While most of these campaigns are being fought in New York, in Pennsylvania, further places up north, remember the Cherokee are the main native ally of the British. So the British go to their Cherokee allies and they ask for help. And they say, look, will you send your warriors to go north and join us in our battles against the French in Canada and New York on campaign? And the Cherokee, who are always up to once again show their valor on the battlefield, balk at this. And they say, look, we're happy to go off and fight. However, the last time we helped you guys out, that left our home villages open to attack from the French coming up from Alabama. If you can guarantee the survival of the homeland, we'll send our warriors to go off and help. And so because this alliance was considered so important, His Majesty King George II himself ordered the governor of South Carolina to send a full body of regular, professional, red-coated British soldiers to march over the Appalachian Mountains, a full month's march from Charleston, and build a fort here in the overhill towns of the Cherokee, what's now East Tennessee. And this was the first European-built outpost settlement in what is now Tennessee that would be permanent. It would be built in 1756 and it would last until 1760. And over these 4 years, the British maintained, at least here at the fort, maintained a good coexistence with their Cherokee neighbors. Many soldiers married Cherokee wives. They would constantly have trade with the local Cherokee. They would go, the officers would meet for counsel. All these things are going well. However, relations between the Cherokee and the British are breaking down elsewhere. There are parties of Cherokee warriors coming back from campaign are attacked while going through Virginia. These Virginia settlers, all they saw were Indians coming through their area, and they attacked them, not knowing that they were their allies. These Cherokees sought revenge. Cherokee law called for a balance, an eye for an eye. So a group of Cherokee warriors, they go over to the Yadkin River Valley in South Carolina, seeing all British as one people, and they kill 3 settlers. The balance is now even, square, everything is fine. Now the government of South Carolina demands justice. But British justice says we want those culprits, those murderers, the people who perpetrated. They go to the chiefs they know and say, hand these people over. Well, the chiefs, of course, it doesn't work that way. We can't hand over someone from another village, from another area. Even so, we don't know who did this. And this fight goes back and forth for a couple of years until finally heads butt continuously to the point where neither side can acknowledge and accept the other's cultural differences, and war breaks out. And so in 1760, in the winter, the Cherokee officially declare war on the British. And now the poor folks of Fort Loudoun are 500 miles deep in enemy territory, with no chance to make it back and no place to go. They herd all of their livestock into the fort, get everyone, 250 men, women, and children, mostly about 200 of them were soldiers, into this fort. And there they would stay for the next 7 months as the Cherokee slowly starved them out. Now, how did they last that long off of what meager rations they had? A lot of these soldiers who had Cherokee wives, many of these Cherokee had become friends with these soldiers, and they brought them food. Even while part of their own country is at war with them, they continued to feed them and look after them, considering them part of their family. Well, after 7 months, food finally ran out, and the fort was forced to surrender to the Cherokee. The first time an all European military force was taken by an all native force. They surrendered in August of 1760, and they were allowed to march back to Charleston with their arms, their ammunition, anything they could carry on their backs. And the first day they marched 19 miles out towards the mountains to the east, back towards Charleston, and they encamped where Cane Creek flows into the Tellico River. Slept a peaceful night, and the next morning about 5 a.m. they get up to begin the day's march, and they notice it's eerily quiet, and all their Cherokee guides have disappeared. It's a misty morning. They get up, they're lining up, and someone notices Cherokee concealed in the tall grass at the edge of the meadow. And at about the time they notice this, shots ring out. Depending on which source you read, about 2,000 Cherokee warriors come hooting, hollering, giving ear-splitting war cries, firing their muskets, and rushing out of the forest into this encampment of 250 men, women, and children. About 25 of them are killed outright, mostly the officers, the sergeants, about 20 of the soldiers, and 3 women. All the rest are grabbed, hauled back to the Cherokee villages, made to dance to their own defeat, and kept as prisoners and hostages to give back to the British over the next 2 years. The British retaliated brutally and burned many of the Cherokee lower towns near modern-day Clemson, South Carolina. After this expedition, the Cherokee and the British came to the peace table, because now, in the late 1760s, 1761, the French and Indian War is all but over. The Cherokee are still wanted to be an ally by the British, but this was the high point of their power. And of course, with peace, the Cherokee would be allowed to keep their area in East Tennessee until after the American Revolution, when of course their land would be reduced until eventually they'd be forced on the Trail of Tears. But the story of Fort Loudoun, even though it only lasted for 4 years, is the first true point of European contact and European settlement in what is now East Tennessee. And it shows not just the power of the European advancement, but the power that was still held by many of the native tribes that were native to this area.